tonight, because whatever in our relationship, like how does that change things? So, I don't know, I guess for me that doesn't necessarily call for a need to define femme, but I think, just highlights again that like notions of femme really don't function when they're carved out in terms of like, something as like in relation to like, because honestly, like how would somebody talk about my femme identity if I fuck everybody? Really, like how is that talked about? So unless like I become like a visible, active like unit being, whatever, then like there isn't really space for femme to apply to my body, or my identity or like my actions. So I think that femme is like a very fluid category, and like I'm femme, but like damn, I don't look femme all the time. I definitely don't. I mean, I'm sure everybody on this campus who knows me or has known me for some years has seen that my aesthetic, my presentation has changed a lot, and like that's just what what it is or how it's been. So but I think that it's really important to and think about ways to actively carve out space for femmes, but maybe not like defining that as like a solid identity category, because again that intersects in so many different ways. So
I feel like but it becomes hard. Like I think it's difficult whenever people talk about definitions, because like definitions do inherently exclude, because like when you create an in-group, you have to create an out-group. Like there's not another option. And I also think like it becomes difficult to organize around an identity that is completely undefined except for about what it's not. Yep. Like for instance, I signed for a group on campus called the Fempire, as did some other people in this room. But the difficulty that that I experienced within that group is that like no one necessarily identified as femme in the group. It was just kind of like a catch-all for femininity or just gayness. It was just like the catch-all gay group. Which is okay, those but like fitted clothes. Yeah, exactly. People whose clothes touch their bodies. And I think that does a disservice to femmes, that we can never have like a place where it's like, no, like we're here because we identify as femme. I don't think that it needs to be like a super like, and on Mondays, femmes only wear lipstick, and like you must wear a skirt 4 times a week, no sweatpants except for on Fridays, like Mean Girls, like. Exactly, and pink on Wednesdays. Like I don't think that it needs to be that specific, but I do think that it should at least be like understanding that there is a difference between sexuality, sex, and gender, and that like femme is a gender. It's like a gender that like is as complicated and like confusing and fluid as everyone else's gender. And like is no more oppressive than anyone else's gender. Like it's not a value neutral judgment that people make when they're talking about femme, like it's very value laden. And in that sense, like, yeah, it just becomes super hard to organize around, I think.
But I think something that you said, which is so radical, is that like femme is a gender. Like I've never heard that before, and I think that like if there was, more sense of femme as a gender, that might be another way to kind of like localize and, whatever. But I don't know, I just never heard that before, but that seems to work in my mind right now.
Yeah, my gender is femme. I've been putting it on things, and I think people get kind of confused. Like, like when they're like forms, when they try to like have like those like PC forms where it's just like boxes for everything. It's like, like just, no, not even just like where it's just like, just tell me in the box, like, and that's fine. I think that's a better way to do things. Yeah, but like, I'll write femme in the box and people will be like, so you want to say a little more about that? You want to say a little more about being what you mean by gender femme?
Like, so you're a girl.
Yeah.
And you're like,
Or the boxes will be like female, male, genderqueer, trans. And it's like, yeah, those are super specific. But like, and like, what do I check then? Like, do I check genderqueer? Like, I don't necessarily identify as anything queer. I feel like that word is not necessarily accessible to the community that I come from, and thus like if I'm going to continue organizing in my own community, like there's no way that I'm going to be organizing a queer identity. There's no way. So, like, I guess for me, I always preferred the word gender fuck, like fucking with gender, like playing with gender, being intentional about gender more than I like gender queer. Because I feel like queer, to me, is an identity that subsumes, like rather than, I think umbrella categories subsume the identities beneath them. Or like that fall under them, like I think that falling under is like the way that I would put it. And I think that a working definition of femme that we were constantly revising and like willing to take criticism on would be the best way to, or personally, that would be the best way to organize around femme issues and identities. Because we do have like issues and like separate problems. You know, I'm rarely assumed to be straight. When it happens, I think I either start speaking or spitting, and then somebody loses that idea. And so, like, I guess, you know, I think the femme invisibility is often like one of the ways that we define like being a femme. You know, like if I can't tell, then you're a femme. You know, but like, and I think like that's a problem too. You know, because like that's also a negative relation. You know, it's like being visibly queer. You know, or being like visibly out. You know, like it's different to people than being a femme. And in that way, I think that like it creates like a really marginal, liminal space for femmes to be in.
I think I've